Welcome to the 5D Codes. I'm Theresa, your host, and we are in the last season of the 5D Codes. I'm going to talk about the inception because intention is so important with everything. What we're learning in New Earth is that we are co-creators, right? We realize that we have been so scared of our own light, and it's like we've been comfortable. It's like this comfortable discomfort of living in the shadow. Wild story, because everything in our life is story, and whether it's made up or not, essentially it is all made up, because as we accept our role as a co-creator, which is scary as all get out, it's scary as fuck. I'm going to just be blunt. Heck, this is my podcast. I can talk as I want to. It's scary as fuck to accept that you are God. You are a piece of creation. You have that power within you. I've been doing this yoga kriya in the morning, and I felt like my ego was resistant to it when I, had the quote initiation. And I'm not a guru person. I'm writing a book about this one too. This is not, we learn that we are, we're our own guru in a sense. My cat's walking towards me. Cats are the perfect example of this. Do they listen to anybody? No. They know it's them and God, right? Nature is such a beautiful reminder. All sentient beings are teaching us constantly. I know that my light can change the world. So can yours. We all have to have this realization. That is scary as fuck. So doing this kriya, you build up all this energy. It's breathing practices. You start with a basic yoga practice just to warm you up and open the chakras, and then you do this breathing practice, and you can feel the Kundalini energy rising. And it takes time to clear your system to do this. And I could feel my ego's resistance as, I was receiving this initiation, receiving the practice from the teacher. And that's a representation, that's fear of this light, because it's just light energy that you're experiencing, the, beauty of your soul, the breath of your soul. It's meant to scare the ego, right? We chose to come here and live this dualistic experience to remember, to remember who we truly are. And I'm constantly, I don't know about you, I'm constantly asking myself that question. In moments where I feel the most connected to God, I'm sitting in nature, like this morning with my cat, feeding my squirrel friends in the yard, watching the cardinals eat the seed that I put out, the little sparrows. Who am I? It's like that question will never get old. Even when I know who I am, even in those moments of deep clarity, it feels refreshing, because to me, it represents the complete disillusion of ego. It's like, no, I'm not Sarah that likes all of these specific things. I'm not this personality construct. Who am I? I feel like I'm none of it and all of it at once. We're going to get existential in this episode. I'm going to talk about a story my daughter shared. My daughter got back from this overnight camp. She was in this nature camp. They were camping for 4 days in the wild. And, she was really hesitant to go. Here's the fear of new experiences. She had a major breakthrough. She's come back. Her energy is completely different. And that was my prayer for her as she was going to this thing, and I know you cannot save anybody else. We can wish and hope and pray that our friends, our, the loves of our life, our tribe will remember the truth of who they are, will be okay embracing that. And that, I feel like that is it's cheesy to say, happiness, our authenticity in this life, but that is our true nature. I feel like we're constantly in this state of ebullience, this bubbly, glowy, overflowing with love energy. And it doesn't always look like mania or bliss, it might actually look like just equanimity, just serenity. The story of Buddha, Siddhartha, after he became enlightened and he chose to be a boatman, he chose to take people back and forth on the river and live a simple life. 2 years ago, when I got back from Mount Shasta, that's the space I was in. It's like, I just want to work in a garden store. I ended up, time is irrelevant here, whether it was a year or two ago, but some things in this, I feel like in this realm, we're still in the dense 3D realm as we're embracing this 5D love consciousness. And some things can manifest super quickly, and some things take time. It's like, it feels like it takes forever. Like 2 years ago, I wished for a thriving pet sitting business. And now, as I've let go of it, literally let go of the desire of having it, I thought I was going to close shop in August of this year. I am getting all kinds of clients reaching out to me, and I don't even know where they're finding me. Like this one Facebook post that I shared on a page went viral. 2 years it's taken. And it took me to completely let it go, right? This is the trick. It's like this trickster thing with the ego. And many people try this. They try to manipulate it through manifestation books and, signing up for courses and forcing it. And I did that about 4 years ago. And that honestly led to nothing but heartache. It led to complication. It would some things would come in, but I wasn't energetically ready for it. So I felt like it got screwed up in some way. It didn't flow gracefully. As I have energetically so-called prepared and surrendered to the timing of the universe, like with my pet sitting business, there's been plenty of months where I've, it's been living hand to mouth. And then I'll have months where it's I have so many clients coming in, I can put away money to save for a few months. So it's been unpredictable. There's definitely been a process of patience with this. And this is part of bringing this 5D energy into the 3D consciousness in our physical realm. Surrendering to the timing of the universe, to God's time, is a very humbling experience. And it takes the dissolution of the ego. So when the ego revs up and says, I want to do this, in tantrums, like when I did this yoga kriya training, that is a good sign. It's not enjoyable, but it's also the ego is so used to having a problem and suffering. When it has complete serenity, it flips the fuck out, right? So when you're flipping the fuck out, you're in your ego. Here's a little code. When you're feeling that serenity and it's okay, maybe I notice my ego yelling in the background, but it's calm. It's just static in the background. That's consciousness, because I don't know if that ever goes away. I haven't experienced that going away fully, other than for a few hours when I had a complete no thought experience after doing the Satanama chant in my yoga training in 2005. It was in Vancouver. And it was definitely a Kundalini experience. My whole body started shaking when I was doing this chant with my yoga class. I was in my 500-hour training. And all of a sudden, my brain took a deep breath. It's like I actually wished that experience back. It was so peaceful. And I felt this peace that I have never felt in my life. And there were no thoughts. And I could see people's minds moving. I could actually see what was going on for them. And I noticed most people were not fully present. It's wow, they're just in their heads looping and looping and looping. Just like the dog running around behind me. And then, after 2 hours and a bus ride and getting hungry and having to go to Whole Foods, somebody struck up a conversation with me and my mind started chattering again. And, that's the way of being human. But that experience was a teacher to me. We can't attach to these things. That's what I've learned and relearned, remembering. Okay, this is what it's like when you're in that space of being fully conscious and just aware. Desires are going to crop up. We're human. We're going to need our brain, to help us plan things. And, it's a tool, and we learn how to use it. And that's what these practices like the yoga kriya I'm doing and so many other practices that you probably do teach us. We have to train the wild horses of the mind. But we also know we can't fully tame it. So how do we just let it be? We observe it. We don't attach to it. That's the detachment piece. So the existential piece, the story my daughter told me, she talked about the Russian sleep experiment. Disclaimer, I have not researched this, but I will tell you, my 15-year-old, who is a beautiful soul, Pisces soul, beautiful imagination, amazing writer, tells a good story. So she said she saw this on a video when she was 11, and I don't know the time frame of this. I'm thinking based on what she was sharing, this was way back in the 50s or something. But they gave prisoners an option, and I'm telling you this because of the metaphor in the story as it connects to this ego dissolution. They gave these prisoners an option of that did pretty serious crimes. Like, you can go to jail and serve your sentence, or you can do this sleep experiment that we need four volunteers for. So 4 men, chose to volunteer. They put them in what she claims, they put them in a room. They had some gas that was, something, obviously some element, chemical, something that they were putting in the air to keep them awake. Okay. So, and they fed them, and they had books, and they could talk to each other. In the first 5 days, I guess my daughter claimed in her story, they were talking to each other. They were having deep conversations. And then as each day went on, their conversations started getting darker and darker. Day 5 hit. That was the clincher. They stopped talking to each other, and they were just, days went by and they weren't talking. And then there were microphones in the room. There were windows. They were being observed. They were being recorded. Some of them started whispering into the microphone. One thing that they said was, we don't want to be free. And as it went on, it kind of became like a zombie horror story. They were testing them and seeing how long could they, what would happen to their psyche if they didn't sleep for 30 days. Okay, so I don't know the time frame of this, but she claims they stopped eating the food that was given to them, and they started eating themselves. This is going to get violent. They weren't harming each other, they were harming themselves. And, the clincher at the end was, they did not want to be free. They were basically destroying themselves. The ego, you think about sleep, it allows the ego to rest, because, an active mind can get crazy, These people had a psychotic break. So if the ego is always activated, and this is how spiritual practices help us, and a spiritual practice could just be anything that gets you into that heart space. This is 5D consciousness. For me, I'm sitting outside with my cat in the evening. I don't know if you can hear the cicadas in the background. Being in nature, watching animals is probably the deepest heart-opening practice that I have right now. Yoga Kriya is great. Playing with my singing bowls is great. Meditating, closing my eyes, paying attention to the sensations in my body, or oming is great. But there's something about the simplicity of Mother Earth and the sentient world that opens my heart. And obviously, sleep is good. So you think sleep is when the ego mind rests. The soul doesn't need rest. The ego does, right? Our physical body does. So when you allow that 3D self to rest, you wake up revived, and it's like the ego is easier to manage, right? But those spiritual practices are so vital to keep the ego calm. The only spiritual teacher I truly had, I had a guru experience in my 20s, which kind of was like, led to almost like a cult experience, like a loss of self. Like, I had that full-on guru experience, and then that was it. It's like I moved that out of my system. But there were certain things he said to me that were like these seeds that watered this deep knowledge within me. One of them was, the ego is like a sleeping dragon. I'm sure he read this somewhere. It truly is. So when you wake that dragon with no sleep, right, with triggers and no spiritual practice, it roars. It can become a fire-breathing dragon, and it can sabotage you, and it can sabotage everything around you. So part of this process is not doing nothing. It's having the consciousness, the awareness, and this is grounded spirituality, to know, action leads to consequence. What do you need to do to maintain a balanced life? When my mind shut off for 2 hours, in my yoga training, I just rode a bus. I felt like it's like living Eckhart Tolle's experience. And ironically, I was in Vancouver, where Eckhart Tolle lived, and I think he wrote that book. He was living there definitely at the time that I was there. I had no thoughts, and I remember just observing on the bus and feeling so at peace, doing nothing, until my stomach started grumbling, and then my mind was like, ooh, gotta get food. Where am I gonna go? Gotta plan. Got off at Whole Foods, which was a common thing for me, and it was interesting that my mind started to kick on then when I had the desire. I had to feed my body. Like sleep is a desire too, that in this sleep experiment, they had to pump this gas, that was this artificial way of keeping them awake. So it was like they were telling their bodies, no, don't listen to yourself. So it's interesting that the body started to literally eat itself, It's like, oh, I'm going to go against my body now because I'm taught, it's being impressed upon me within my environment to ignore my body's signals. When we ignore the signals of the soul by not doing practices that open our heart, and I mean practice is just a way of living, right? I mean, you could have every moment is a spiritual practice. The way you prepare your breakfast in the morning and, the ritual that you might make coffee or tea with or whatever can become a profound spiritual experience. I saw the Mary Oliver documentary today as a writer. I was like, I love her poetry, and obviously her one poem, gosh, I don't know the title of it. And the very last line is, what will you do? I think it's summer with your one wild and precious life. That is coming from her soul. It's like her soul is saying that. What will you do with your one wild and precious life? And Mary Oliver had a lot of trauma in her life. Abuse, ran away from home at 17. That pain. She could have writhed in that pain. If her ego was, if she was just focused on her ego in the primal brain, she could have become a very angry, bitter person. Instead, her soul took over and she had this love for writing. She wanted to be a poet ever since she was little, and that's all she did in her free time, spend time in nature, spend time writing poems. That was her soul. That was her 5D self, We all have access to that. I'm ending this podcast in one more episode because it's time. Because my soul is like, all right, you've gotten all the information out. Your intention to do this is complete. It is time to move on to the next thing. It's just a felt sense. It is what it is. And oftentimes when we listen to the soul, there is no, quote, logic, right? It's not coming from the mind. It is heart-based. There is no rhyme or reason. It's like that gut sense, And I feel that so profoundly. When I recorded this podcast, I recorded something 2 days ago I thought I was going to make into the podcast, and I had this thing happen that made me feel kind of bitter. It was very triggering to my ego, but ultimately it was a blessing in disguise. I applied for this job that I would actually be working with under my old manager again for my job at Headspace, and I had such a horrible experience there towards the end. It was just a job that was unsustainable, and my body started shutting down. I had migraines that were so bad I couldn't be on the screen. It was obviously my body's way of saying, this isn't the job for you, And I was pushed to the point of resignation, and it was very challenging. The only reason, honestly, I took that job, it was a fear-based reason. It was like, I need stable income. Self-employment is unstable, as I see in what I'm doing now. But I'm so much happier, even in the moments where I'm like, oh, where's the next, client coming from? The expansion I feel and the level of creativity I have is huge because I have the blessing of time. I'm hanging out with animals that open my heart all day. I'm in 5D. And 5D doesn't have to do with the 3D. So money is just another form of energy, and as we know, the universe is our bank account. And if you didn't know, I'm reminding you. And there are times when it's like, yeah, you don't need excess, It's like trust. Just like that squirrel that's rummaging through your yard. I mean, sometimes his meal comes from me. I've got peanuts I give them in the morning. And sometimes it comes from somewhere else. But they will always find food, right? It might not be easy one day, and it might be super easy another day, but that's just how it flows. The rhythms of life. So, hang on, I lost my flow here, but no, I didn't. I'm keeping this wide open. So when I recorded that podcast, I was like, oh, should I? I was almost one that I wanted to script out, and I've done that with a couple. And it's funny because they don't get as many hits. It's like when I just let it flow, people feel that. People feel the grace behind it, you know? I was really hurt. My very own old manager, who actually sent me a voice memo prior to this interview and said, yeah, I think this would be a good fit, She shared stuff about it. And I remember feeling my body tightening as I listened. The only reason I wanted to interview, my old people pleaser coming in, these patterns are there quietly in the background. But this is the cool code I'm sharing, is that we can't go back. You can't go back to those old patterns now. And my energy as I'm sharing this is so very different from when I first recorded this story 3 days ago. How quickly things shift. Even in 24 hours, my energy shifted that day when I recorded it. And I had this low-grade migraine. This is the cool thing, how my body talked to me. When I had the interview with my manager, it was the second interview for this position. The first one was with the HR person. The tone changed halfway into the interview. When I actually started to ask genuine questions about the job, and I could feel something shifted in her. And then I found out, she didn't feel like it would be a good fit for me when I started to share more about, what I love, what I've loved about past positions, what I haven't. And it was not a job that I probably would have enjoyed. It was 10 hours on the computer, and it was more administrative work, because I'm used to being more front-facing with people or doing coaching or feelings-based work. And this was more of a medical job. But when I got that rejection from HR, I was so hurt. And then I messaged my manager, because I have her text just to close the loop. And she openly mentioned, I feel like you could do the job really well, but I don't feel like you would enjoy it, and I thought, wow, that took balls for her to to reject me and not move me on to the next one and let that one kind of end it. But the message I got was that that old pattern was about acceptance. I didn't like being rejected or abandoned. So I probably would have said yes to the job and, have burned out pretty quickly. And the universe didn't even want to put me through that. And this is my higher self talking. This is my soul. It's like, no more bullshit now. In this realm that we're in this phase of Earth, I don't even want to say it's like new Earth, old Earth. I don't know. My thoughts about it are constantly changing as my energy is evolving, as yours is evolving. It's like this new consciousness of Earth. There's no bullshit. No more going back to those old patterns. It's like if I look back at my life, no more of those toxic men that basically they want like a mother figure, or, they don't know how to handle their emotions. They're avoidant. They're very inconsistent with communication. That's such an old pattern. As I am listening to myself and conscious of my needs, like the Russian sleep experiment, I'm not trying to eat my own body, literally. This is what the psyche can do. It can literally try to destroy itself with its thoughts. Oh my God, I'm unworthy. And the reason I applied for this job was out of fear. I'm like, oh, my pet sitting, it's unreliable. It would be nice to have a consistent paycheck. I could still do it while pet sitting. But you know what? That would bleed into my writing time. That would bleed into my creativity time. And if it causes me pain, I started getting a migraine during that interview, and I had it for 3 days until I processed it through. And to be honest, it's like, now it's gone. I know my body's fully cleared something when the physical symptoms are gone. We all have our own barometer. So you figure out yours, or maybe you know it. For me, my body gets, has these ailments that pop up. And I know now. I used to fight the ailments. I used to try to focus just on the physical. Now I know it's all connected. My ego is triggered. It's cool. Okay. The pattern recognition is important. But what I'm realizing is that, we don't have to push it, force it so much. I think that's what a lot of these spiritual programs are, quote, selling and touting. And people, I was getting almost obsessive. It was like a compulsion to do these manifestation rituals, or, had these friends in this new age community. Like when I went to Mount Shasta, oh, you've got to get in the quantum field and imagine this. Like if you're doing these house sits, Sarah, you should imagine yourself owning one of these houses. And it just felt so plastic. It didn't feel like me. And it's just funny because as I pray for, a living space that just is in alignment, to be honest, my current living space just keeps getting better. Like my neighbors, I'm becoming closer friends with my neighbors, and it feels more community every day. Like both my neighbors watch my cat so that I can do these house sits. And it's like community. Like when I had apartments that felt more spacious, I was also more isolated, which is interesting. So it's like how to have the best of all worlds. I'm sitting in my backyard now that I've made a backyard. Like we have a driveway, a gravel driveway, but we have got trees all around us. The neighbors have this homestead, so there's kind of like woods behind me. And I just set up like this chair area and started in I potted some tomatoes and peppers and herbs, created a little garden back here, put some hops in the back so that they can grow along the neighbor's fence. And my cat and I are chilling right now. I've got a candle and incense going to keep the mosquitoes at bay. And it just feels like a yard, which is so interesting because I was grumbling about this place just probably, I would say 2 years ago. Last year, I was definitely more in the 5D space and making this more yardy. But, we just got this driveway. It's like, how about you're a co-creator? Make your heaven on earth. Instead of just like waiting for it to come or like begging God or like, having a tantrum and trying to pay somebody, like that's your ego trying to take control. Surrender. Accept what is right now because I can't change it. Here I am living in, an apartment in a house with 3 apartments, but a 1-bedroom apartment. I've made a 2-bedroom apartment gifted to me by a friend. That's a blessing. And I have made a yard, like made a very comfortable Zen sitting space in a space that I looked at and grumbled about and called just a driveway 2 years ago because I refused to co-create. It's like, here's a story. When my sister was little, my sister Rebecca, who is now in spirit, she was a very impatient child, I'll say. And she definitely had an addictive personality. My mom tells this story so well. She was about 7 or 8, and it was summer. And my sister had a rake or something, and she was like hitting this tree, like hitting the branches. And my mom came out, and she's like, "Rebecca, what are you doing?" And she was like, "I want a leaf pile. I want a leaf pile now." And my mom was like, "Rebecca, it's not autumn. There's months to go before autumn. You have to wait." And she started crying. She was like, "I don't want to wait. I want it now, And my mom, who was actually a recovering alcoholic, actually told this story at AA meetings. And she said, this is a perfect example of, in addiction, they talk about the ego. It's like the ego is trying to run the show. Ego, the acronym, stands for edging God out. Edging God out. She didn't want to accept what was true in the moment. And what was true was it was summer. Those leaves were sticking hard to that tree, and they were very happy there, right? And those leaves have a purpose. So if she fully accepted what the leaves' purpose was in that moment, she might have sat and enjoyed lemonade under the cool shade of the tree, right, on a hot summer day. Instead, she was trying to make something happen that she wanted to happen now. How often have we done that in our lives? I know I'm guilty of it. And I'm not saying that, and, I think the guilt shame thing, that is a huge program that, we're clearing as we're stepping, or maybe we've cleared if we step into this 5D consciousness. That is my ego tripping itself out. That is my ego trying to eat itself. That is me sleep deprived and psychotic. That is me scared the hell of being happy. What if I accepted life on life's terms and didn't edge God out and said, okay, it's summer. And I know I can't have a leaf pile right now, so how can I enjoy what I have here now? How can I make the most of this tree? And to be honest, that's the tree that we made a tree house in. So it's like, I don't know if that was that summer, but that would be a cool add-on to the story. It was like my brother came out one day with some pieces of wood and said, "Hey, Rebecca, let's make a tree house," right? And all of a sudden, Rebecca starts embracing the tree and is happy about the leaves because those leaves allow more coverage. So it makes it feel like more of a fort. You know what I mean? It's like there's so many ways to shift your perception to savor what is now. I have this 1-bedroom apartment, but I have community. I'm in a space where, my cat is attended to, and my cat loves being out and going into the neighbor's yard and having the trees and woods to roam in and the shade to sit under on hot summer days. And to be honest, I love it too. I'm loving the shade of these trees. I'm loving the sound of the cicadas that are loving these trees around me right now. When we accept what is, it doesn't tell life, oh yeah, I know. It's like not victim mentality. Like, I know it's not going to get better, so I better just accept this now. No, it's like, I see this is my current moment. This is why Siddhartha decided to become a boatman, right? When he became Buddha. Like, it doesn't have to be wild and crazy. Like, he did all of the wild and crazy things, and that didn't bring him any closer to serenity. Serenity is simple. And it doesn't mean we don't have desires. To be honest, I'm feeling like I have more desire to savor the moment, and things flow more gracefully as I accept what is. This is why people are reaching out to me left and right about pet sitting after one simple post. And it's funny because I'm somebody that does not like marketing. And that's what I, quote, manifested a few years ago. It's like, I just want a word of mouth business where I have like, a certain amount of like steady clients that, kind of keep me flowing, and it's word of mouth based, and it might even allow me to travel and do it. Manifestation, to be honest, I feel like those, what we quote, wish for, pray for, manifest, when it comes from that place where it makes us feel so joyful and expansive, it's coming from the soul. It's a prayer from the soul. The timing, that's where we have to edge God out. Or sorry, that's funny. That's what the ego says, where we don't want to edge God out. That's where the ego gets really impatient. I want to happen now. Like 2 years ago, I wanted to move now because I didn't like the yard, and I wanted this and I wanted that. I was literally, and this is the spiritual dance, forced to submit. I mean, life had to beat me down so bad. I swapped apartments with my friend, which helped. I mean, he took the smaller apartment. That was very kind of him, but he's also working on renovations for that. But I remember while I was, quote, waiting for that to happen, he needed time to like clear his stuff. I had to live elsewhere. I lived in my friend's house. I think my daughter and I had a house sit during part of that, but then another piece, I was like couch surfing basically. And that was like super humbling, because my daughter was living full time with her dad during the school week, which, worked out, but it made my ego feel like a piece of shit, because I'm like, oh, according to the Matrix, I'm like not worth much right now. I'm homeless and, this and that. And like, I was in that spiral of victim mentality. Like there was this battle going on in my mind, and I had gotten sick. I thought there was mold in the apartment that I was in, which was my friend was switching. And so I needed to like clear myself out of the living space. It did something to me. It broke something in me that thought she had to have control, and it forced me to just surrender. And we all go through this in a different way. I'm seeing it now, it was like grace taking over, just like me getting rejected from this job. Those things hurt. I think when it hurts in the moment, it's like, and this could happen with a breakup too. I had a friend ghost me. From the friend that I thought was part of my tribe, a while back. And it was so hurtful because it was like somebody that I felt like I was really, emotionally intimate with. And I got to see though, like how much I was defaulting to that person to share certain things so that I wasn't like processing fully on my own. And it just got me to see certain parts of myself and like wake them up and find that worth within myself. Like it was like I was expecting to get validation from this friend. And when they weren't in my life, I had to find that validation within, it's like that whole, when one door closes, another door opens. Any rejection is God's protection. I love that sentiment. Any rejection is life's protection, the universe's protection, Our soul is taking the lead right now. Trust that, my friend. I guess that's the core message here. And, as we close this season, the next episode, I have no idea what's going to be said, what's going to flow when it flows, but I am going to document all of this in a book. I think there's something to the 5D codes, and I think that they're ahead of their time right now. I know a lot of this stuff you might be like, oh, I've heard this, da da da. But there's a cadence to this. There's an energy and a vibration. Like we're in the quantum together, everything is energy that is deep. And let's say it comes from our starseed buddies, it's like we're tapping into energy and wisdom that's beyond the time that we're in this moment. I'm gonna go to Mary Oliver. Seeing this documentary today was very timely because, it was really comforting as a writer to see, not comforting, like didn't want to hear that she was also in poverty, but she had a very similar trajectory, like even money-wise, and she and her partner were both artists, and she didn't make it as a writer until she was like 50, and at that point she just let go of needing praise. I don't think she was ever somebody that wanted praise, but she loved her art. She lived for her art, and when people started to finally publicly recognize it, it's like, wow, it didn't matter to her. That's the soul. That's the soul. I think what's happening is that God, life, is like, hey, I know you're pure light, but you have to see that. You have to accept that your power is not something to fear. Your happiness, your joy is what you're here for, but your ego has to submit. Your ego has to bow and bend to this. And this is where the spiritual practices come in. It ain't easy. This is the spiritual journey we're all on, peeps. You have to want that deep light, to emanate that light and be that light so badly that you're willing to let go of everything. That it's like Mary didn't expect that praise. I just completely let go of my pet business, and that's what the universe is telling me to do, because that's what keeps coming to me, right? And I don't have that attachment to it anymore. That's when you're in alignment with your soul. Not having that attachment to so many things. I mean, insert your thing of choice, relationships, money, purpose. I mean, I don't like saying career because I feel like that's an ego sentiment. Even the sense of who you are, the connection with what you identify with, right? As a personality structure. When we open to the flow of life, it gets really, really magical, And it doesn't mean that those moments of rejection, which are God's protection, do not hurt. It's like, I know I have a personality and she has emotions. And at this point, it's like, I know the game. Like, I got to feel it. I got to accept it. It wasn't fun, but I had to go through that 3 days of migraine and frustration and processing with friends out loud, in my head, on walks, whatnot, grumbling. And then something shifted. That is God's timing, though. We don't control the shift. So my daughter, who went to this nature camp, I will share openly, I had a session with an intuitive about her because I was, quote, worrying as a mother. And, I prayed. I said, I really want to find the right person. There's this grounded psychic locally that I love that, I've met with a couple times in the past, 7 years or something. And I know people are just reading from their level of consciousness, but, she's just got a very, this is where we use our intuition, grounded energy. Just grounded is the best way to put it. And everything she said has been boom. I listened to what she said because I prayed. I said, I can't get all the information that I need for my daughter. How can I guide her right now? And she said, I see her really thriving socially. She's really struggled with school and being able to go back to school. She's going to this new school this year. If she, spends time in nature, so just like me, she needs this, nature to open her heart. And it's funny, she was so glued to her screen and be in this group of kids that are, less than 5 kids, 5 or less. Ironically enough, there were 4 other kids. No, there were just 3. So she was the 4th kid. And then there were 2 instructors. And she said, everything that she said was happened. But I kind of pushed for this program. I had to, so again, co-creator. I found this thing on the internet. I met with this guy and I was like, oh, he sounds pretty stand up. had a good vibe. Turns out he didn't have an open program. Okay, this is where we're conscious co-creators. It was like for this one school district that's like 40 minutes away, kind of out in the boondocks. And he said, but I have this funding and we might have room for an extra, couple people. So he quoted me this price, like the school district paid for the kids that were going. Like, if you guys want to come, like, I'll give you this discount. And it was still expensive. But I just kept getting the vibe, like, make it work. I couldn't make it work, like, for myself. So a friend, donated basically tuition for my daughter for my half. And then her father paid her half. And it wasn't like, again, when we make these decisions, sometimes it doesn't flow like super easily, we had to do some work along the way, but she had a breakthrough. And I just can't believe the kid that, I was talking to tonight. Today was my first time seeing her after she got back 4 nights there and then 2 nights at her dad's. It was like, oh my gosh, who are you? I feel like she's the girl that I felt all along, that soul that I birthed 15 years ago that's, come and gone at points in her life. There's points where her light is shined so brightly and then she'll get into this cloud again. And this cloud has definitely been more enhanced since she was 11. I feel like puberty starts early now for this generation. And the message this woman gave was like, it will help her feel ready for school. And everything she shared, she talked to my mom and I about it tonight. We had dinner together, was like positive. Even the hard moments. I was like, wow, her consciousness has shifted so much. And shifted meaning she's like in her heart space, When we realize that we're co-creators, we're guided. It's like I was guided to reach out to this woman for this session because I was feeling so much anxiety about my daughter. And I was like, I know I can't control this. It's like, and she might not, maybe she wasn't meant to give me any answers, but I didn't even ask her any specific questions. I just said, I just want to know about my daughter. And I'm going to let, kind of spirit takes the lead. But that's how our soul knows to live life. This is what we're remembering, how graceful and easy this process can be. Again, not that we don't go through these human hurdles. And Mary Oliver's story, she had so much trauma, and her writing came from this deep place of healing that pain, through love. And that's what I feel like writing has been for me, what my, teaching yoga has been, working with animals. It's like, how can I take this heartache of the human experience and find joy in it? And I'm going to cry. Like, this is what I feel like art does. For me and my soul, I know I'm here as an artist to share, sharing. Podcasting is a form of art, communication is a form of art. To make meaning out of the meaningless. Here's the existential piece, here's the clincher. Who says karma really exists? Who says, we have this karmic cycle and that, we become enlightened and that's it, and we don't come back. And how do we know we don't come back? What is the true meaning of this existence? Is there one? Maybe we're just making it all up. And maybe that's the fun of it as a co-creator. But that's scary as all get out to the ego. For the ego to know that there's no purpose. Wait, I'm not supposed to clobber other people to get ahead, to become the best, to get to the top, to, I feel like even, with the people that clout their religion and the get to heaven. If I get to heaven, I'm winning. You're going to hell and I'm going to heaven. It's like there's this winner and loser. This is why sports are so big. No. What if there's not? The ego is not okay with that. At one point in parenthood, I got my daughter these non-competitive games because I was so frustrated by everything being competitive. And to be honest, they were really boring. I was like, what's the purpose? I'm going to be non-competitive. She did Montessori school when she was younger, and I was doing the homeschool crunchy thing for a while. And it was just funny. We were all laughing one night. I brought this non-competitive game to my sister's house. Like, oh my God, this is like so boring. Because our egos are so used to the fight. So we're conscious of that. That's all. We're just conscious. Oh, there's my ego revving itself up. You know, Mary Oliver was a chain smoker. It's like, you know, we all have our habits in the human skin suit. Be conscious of them. We're not here to be perfect. You know, life is messy. Art is messy. Art is meant to, I feel like, make beauty out of the mess. You know, it's like, show that this mess is God's plan. This is God painting on a canvas. And it's dark and it's light, you know, but it's all great. It's like painting in a gallery. You got to learn to appreciate it. I've learned to appreciate the messy, well, what I used to think was messy, junky looking parking lot of a backyard I have. And now I'm looking at it, I'm seeing, all I can see is the green. Yeah, there's a couple cars parked here, but there's trees, there's a garden. I should post a picture of this for my cover for this episode. In cartoon form, of course. We're meant to make beauty out of the mess. I mean, I guess if you need one code for the 5D, it's like, see the beauty in everything, you know? Mary Oliver's, I'm not even going to quote it, her poem Journey, if you're drawn to read it, she had abuse in her life. It took her all of her life. It wasn't until the last phase of her life that she wrote that poem, that she wrote that book. And I could be misquoting that, but I know she said in her interview with Maria Shriver that she, in this last phase of her life, she was trying to get more honest with her writing and kind of hone in on more of her personal story, you know, because it's been so hard for her to write about. So she focused on metaphor and, you know, spent a lot of time in nature. And I completely understand that too, having experienced trauma and finding that peace in nature. It can be hard to look at those things head on. It takes courage because you know what? Your ego gets revved up. But she got to the point, I think, towards the end of her life where she'd mastered that ego so much, you know, that her soul could speak about the most painful things and bring beauty and meaning to it. And that, my friends, there's my tears. That is, I mean, if I could say that is the purpose, I can't speak for you, but I feel like that is a purpose that I have in this life, is to bring meaning to the pain and the suffering and to find beauty in all of that, to take that shit and realize that it's fertilizing. It's fertilizing the flowers of your soul, you know. That's why the lotus was the symbol that I chose for my old business, Inner Bloom Yoga. It blooms in the muckiest, swampiest, stinkiest waters. This beautiful lotus flower. Yeah, that's God's plan. That's God's plan. We don't want to edge God out. I mean, that's where the matrix gets created, you know? That's where the power structure gets created. We're not here to overcome anyone. In fact, if we all were truly ourselves, nobody would be competing, right? Even in a pet sitting business, every pet sitter, I had to find somebody to replace me because I accidentally double booked myself. And there's no accidents. I was meant to contact this woman. I was meant to reach out to her. And she's a beautiful woman. Like, it all happens for a reason, you know? There is no accident. Sometimes we make a so-called mistake. What I'm trying to say is, you know, she's got a different vibe than I do. And I didn't feel like I would fully resonate with this family when I interviewed, and I messed up their invoice twice. I kept putting the wrong date. I realized something's not right with this. And then I found this woman today, and I just got the vibe that she would gel with this family more than I did. And I guess I was meant to be the connector. You know what I mean? So we can't make a mistake, because even the mistakes are part of the plan, you know? It's a beautiful life, and it's really damn hard. I can tell you, I'm 48 and it's been fucking hard. The last thing to realize that, you know, the mess is beautiful. I will share, I guess, the beautiful way to end this podcast. I have this beautiful moment with my mom, my daughter, and I today. And my daughter in the car on the way home was, you know, chatty and happy, and like, again, I've been experiencing grumpy grump, and she's trying to egg me on like all the time lately. It was so refreshing. She even said, wow, I'm so glad you're my mom. You're such a great mom. We walked in the house and I just about melted on the floor. She said in the car on the way home, and my mouth dropped, wow, your mom must have been the best mom. You guys seem so close. And I haven't told her the full story, but I wanted to tell her, like, wow, there was a point when I literally wanted to disown my mom. Like, I was just done. I had the hardest relationship with her growing up, so hard. I mean, I have 20 journals, maybe more. I have a bin full of journals. And I can't tell you how many journal sessions I had venting about, oh my God, my mom's so frustrating. I can't stand my mom and my sister. And, it was such a hard dynamic. I prayed in my 20s. I found somebody that did like the EMDR. It was like before it was like picked up by therapists. This woman was like a crunchy kind of new agey person. She did this eye movement therapy with me, and I said I want to focus on my mom. And something shifted in me subconsciously, because after I thought about my mom, after that session, I was living 3,000 miles away. I was in Oregon. She was in upstate New York. That's how far away I wanted to be from her. When I thought about her, I wasn't triggered like I had been in the past. And then I went to visit my family, I don't know, that spring, and I felt so different. My perception of my hometown, Rochester, where I am now, shifted. I was like, what, was it that session? Now, back then, I was trying to manipulate and change it. But, I had this thought recently, because I feel so much love for my mom now. And I would consider her like one of my best, buddies, my best friends. Like, I never would have thought that. Like, it was the last thing possible in my life, at that point. Often people that are our so-called enemies, are our biggest blessings, are our biggest teachers in this life. And they're the ones that are meant to open our hearts. That's why we hate them so much. What's the opposite of hate? Love, 5D. If I didn't do a damn thing, let's say I didn't get that EMDR session in my 20s, and if I just waited, I had my daughter at 33, motherhood would have changed my perception of my mom, because that is what's opened my heart the most. So if I didn't do anything, if I didn't try to manipulate it with spiritual sessions and therapy and all this, that change would have happened naturally. And this is what I'm trying to say about the grace of God taking over. Instead of edging God out, open to the grace of God. Edge God in. It will unfold. Our soul wants us to remember. I mean, it seems like it would take away a lot of suffering if we tried to manipulate it and make it happen, right? Like when my sister wanted that leaf pile, she was shaking that tree. In the moment, it would have appeased her. If she made the leaves fall off and had that pile, she would have been a happy kid. Maybe she would have been happy all summer going out and playing in it, right? Would the tree have been happy? No. And maybe it would have been instant gratification and she would have been done with it. Who knows? And then the tree would have been very angry. When we surrender to the grace of our true life path, the path of our soul, as Mary Oliver did when she left home at 17 after, so much abuse. Life has a plan. Motherhood has completely made me love my mom and respect her and see her for who she is. And I know how hard it is to be a mom, but I could see the moments where I didn't appreciate her. I was like, oh my gosh, she's being an annoying mom. She's complimenting me because she's my mom and she has to do that. And moments that I compliment my daughter, she has the same response. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's when I love my mom more. I did the same thing. I didn't believe her, but now I know it was true. My mom really did think I was beautiful, think I was smart, love me deeply. This one birthday, my mom gave me this opal necklace. And opal's a stone you're supposed to give as a gift, right? You're not supposed to buy it for yourself. And that was the only thing she gave me. And I found out it was like $100 necklace. I remember stomping on the floor, like tantruming so badly. Like, that's all you gave me? I felt so unloved because I thought the number of gifts meant more. And I remember looking at my mom's face. Like, I remember this now. She was like heartbroken, and I think I must have apologized to her about it, like even more recently, like, hey mom, sorry about that. It was like water under the bridge for her. But like, how many moments did I have like that where I didn't appreciate her, where I took her for granted, And sometimes that reminder can be as simple as like life has you set up for a moment, like reading a Facebook post. Somebody commented on a post recently, this woman was vlogging about her mom. She was like, I judged my mom as this weirdo all her life, and her mom got diagnosed with some kind of cancer, and she was like, I'm just trying to appreciate her. So she was following her around with a video camera, and her mom was like this big giver. She would wear these funny hats and go to Trader Joe's and buy all these cookies and like give them to construction workers, like, go into offices and randomly give them to like people working in hospitals, and, like nurses, and people that she knew were working hard, and people loved her. People in Trader Joe's would hug her when they came in. She came in, you might even know who I'm talking about. And she was this older, quirky woman, like a retired scientist. And then her daughter had been like, all my life, I thought she was such a weirdo. And now I'm seeing her as I'm being the videographer through other people's eyes. And I'm realizing what an awesome soul she is. I didn't realize how much she gave. Like, she didn't see that side of her mom. And I know this year I didn't think I'd be talking about my mom so much, but I threw the 75th birthday party for my mom. And I don't like parties. I was so anxious about it. And I co-hosted it with my aunt. And my mom, I met some of my mom's friends that I've heard about, but hadn't met. And they were so lovely. I'm like, wow, if my mom is attracting friends like this, she must be a pretty kind, cool person. And the last thing I'll share about this is I was in the Catskills a couple months ago for this meditation retreat that I've probably talked about, the Vipassana. And I like to get like stickers for my water bottle. And I was at this, souvenir shop on my way out, and I saw this magnet. They had all these magnets, and it said cool mom. And it was a picture of this mom with like cool sunglasses or whatever. I was like, I gotta get that for my mom. Now, 20 years ago, definitely not 30 years ago, would I thought about getting that for my mom? Absolutely fucking not. When we were at my mom's apartment today, I was like showing my daughter, I was like, I got this for my mom. Maybe someday you'll get one for me. Maybe someday I'll be cool in your eyes, And I'm joking. Yeah, healing is possible. Healing with the most awful, rotten people, healing with the most awful, rotten circumstances. And sometimes you're meant to walk away from those people. So my story is not your story. But I'm saying grace will offer you that chance. So even if I didn't manipulate all that stuff in my 20s, I would have found that healing with my mom in my 30s and now 40s. As each day passes, I feel just more accepting of her, and to the point where she just doesn't bother me anymore. Pretty wild. If you told me this 30 years ago, I would have said, you're fucking nuts, Which is why it was cool having that session with the intuitive that said, I see your daughter going through this breakthrough, because in that moment, I felt like she was in such a dark cloud, like it wasn't going to happen. It's like I wanted a reminder of that hope. And it doesn't always have to come from an outside source, but my intuition was guided me there. My friend, your soul knows what you need. Your ego is going to try to create these cockamamie elaborate plans. Just observe it, just watch it like a movie, laugh at it. Sometimes you might follow, try to do something, and then like me applying for that job, and then, the door's going to get slammed in your face, and you'll be like, oh yeah, that was my ego. That wasn't my soul, Okay. Life isn't scoffing you. Life isn't shaming you, That's your ego doing all that. So when you surrender to the grace of God, it's like you're loved all the time. That's 5D consciousness. This is our new earth consciousness. We're realizing, yeah, God's got you. It might not look like your ego wants. You might not be in the shiny mansion on the river, but that might not be what would make you happy anyway, And I can share, doing a house sit on a very nice house on the lake, I started to come out of my skin. It's like I realized being on the water and having the water lap up against the shore all the time was actually aggravating. It made it hard to sleep. It was like stirring up all this subconscious stuff. I'm like, whoa, this is why they say water represents the subconscious. Maybe it's not the most peaceful thing to live on all the time. That's a whole nother story. But I kind of laughed because I was like really excited to get to my own peaceful backyard in a city neighborhood. But, there's cars going by, but I'm surrounded by trees after being in a lake house for a week. Because God has a plan. God was like, no, yeah, I know. That's not what's going to make you happy. So that's why it's not manifesting in your life right now, Insert, again, your thing of choice. That's why that relationship isn't there. That's why that, Maybe you need to learn to validate yourself more. That's why that money path isn't there, Edge God in and trust the flow. And the hiccups are part of the process. Your ego's got to humble itself. It's going to keep having to submit because that's just the role of the ego. I don't know how this is going to end, my friend. We make the meaning. That's what I know. The art is you. You are the art that is making beauty out of the mess that is this human experience. And that is the fucking cool thing about it, right? I love you. We're walking home together to realize that we are fucking home. F-bombs feel fitting for this episode. Wow, an hour in. This is Sarah Theresa signing out at just the right time with the 5D codes.